The galaxy learnt the names of the three women too late: Admiral Regis, General Okoye, and Marshal Volkov, commanders whose reputations had steadied entire fronts, were executed by the Galactic Empire during a staged peace summit. Their deaths were broadcast as a warning, their bodies displayed as trophies. The Empire expected fear, it received silence. On Earth, that silence lasted exactly 1 minute. Then every network went dark as priority protocols seized control. The planet's defense grid shifted to wartime authority, and a single line of text appeared on screens from Luna to the Kuiper stations. All restraints lifted. The funerals were private, but the vows were public. Flags were lowered, not in mourning, but in preparation. The names of the three generals were etched into the hulls of warships and whispered into the algorithms of targeting ears. Earth did not scream its grief. It sharpened it. The Empire had believed humans were sentimental, that killing leaders would fracture resolve. They misunderstood what humans did with pain. Within hours, reserve fleets long thought ceremonial were activated. Shipyards that had slept for decades roared awake. Civilian industries converted without protests. Their machines reborn as weapons. Earth's ambassadors returned home without ceremony. Their final transmission to the Galactic Council was brief: "You failed to stop this. Get out of the way." Then the lights went out across the council chamber as human cyber warfare folded there. Systems like paper. The first strike did not target planets. It targeted certainty. Imperial supply lines vanished into static as navigation beacons were spoofed, then inverted. Fleets jumped to coordinates that no longer existed, emerging inside gravity wells that tore them apart. The galaxy watched, stunned, as Imperial armadas died without ever seeing an enemy. When Earth's fleets arrived, they did not posture. They burned straight through border defenses, ignoring hails, ignoring pleas. Human ships moved like predators, quiet, coordinated, and impossibly fast, using tactics the Empire had declared theoretically unstable. Theory bled in the vacuum. Imperial admirals demanded counteroffensives, none came. Every attempt to rally forces ended the same way: command. Nodes erased, officers captured, ships disabled but not destroyed. Humans wanted witnesses. They wanted survivors to carry the message. On captured stations, human marines moved with grim efficiency. They did not loot. They did not gloat. They posted the names of Reyes, Okoye, and Volkov on every wall before moving on. Pritzner later said that was the most terrifying part: the purpose, the absence of hate. The Empire escalated, authorizing planetary bombardments. Earth responded by releasing weapons it had sworn never to use first. Suns dimmed as stellar mirrors turned defensive shields into ovens. Fortress worlds cracked open, their invincible rings falling like broken crowns. The Galactic Council finally found its voice and begged for a ceasefire. Earth answered with evidence. The execution footage, slowed, annotated, time-stamped. "You watched," the human envoy said. "Now you will learn." As the war spread, something unexpected happened. A species long oppressed by the Empire rose up, emboldened by humanity's refusal to compromise. Earth supplied them not with speeches, but with tools, training, and one rule: defend yourselves. The galaxy ignited. Imperial propaganda tried to paint humans as monsters. It failed when liberated worlds broadcast their own stories of human medics treating enemies, of engineers restoring water before claiming victory, of commanders who accepted surrender and kept their word. Mercy, it turned out, could be merciless to tyrants. The Empire's core fleets made a last stand near the capital, forming a wall of fire and shields. Earth's ships slowed, then rearranged, their formation shifting into something ancient and unmistakable. A human admiral spoke at last: "For our dead." The battle was brief and absolute. Human kinetic lances punched through layers of shielding like rain through fog. Boarding teams disabled reactors with surgical precision. The Imperial flagship was captured intact, its command staff stunned to find themselves alive. Earth did not execute them. They put them on trial, broadcast to the galaxy, with every crime documented. The names of the three generals were read first, then thousands more. Justice delivered cold and undeniable. When the Empire formally surrendered, Earth refused the throne it was offered. It dismantled the machinery of domination and walked away from the pieces. "We didn't come to rule," the envoy said. We came to end this. In the quiet that followed, memorials rose on Earth and beyond. 3 statues stood together, facing the stars. Children learned their stories not as legends, but as lessons. The galaxy changed its language after that. It stopped asking what humans would tolerate. It started asking what lines should never be crossed. And in the deep void where Imperial banners once flew, a new warning drifted on automated beacons, simple, human, and final. Do not make us remember them again. The surrender did not end the consequences. In the months that followed, shattered Imperial space became a vacuum of power, and vacuums invite monsters. Pirate coalitions, warlords, and old collaborators tried to seize what was left, believing humanity would withdraw and let chaos reign. They were wrong. Earth stayed not as conquerors, but as custodians. Human task forces established neutral corridors, enforcing one law with ruthless consistency: no reprisals, no genocides, no empires reborn. Any faction that violated it vanished from the star maps within hours. The galaxy slowly realized something unsettling. Humanity was not fueled by bloodlust. It was fueled by memory. Every operation, every patrol, every judgment traced back to the same origin. Point the broadcast execution of 3 women who had trusted diplomacy on Earth. Military academies rewrote their doctrines. The event was no longer classified as war, but as a threshold incident the moment restraint ended forever. Cadets learned that humanity's greatest weapon was not firepower, but the willingness to escalate beyond expectation when moral lines were crossed. Former Imperial worlds petitioned Earth for protection. Humans refused formal alliances, offering instead something rarer: guarantees enforced by presence. A single human cruiser stationed in orbit proved more effective than entire regional fleets. No one wanted to test what happened if it was attacked. Survivors of the Empire's high command lived out their sentences in isolation cells, allowed access only to the historical record of the war. Psychologists later reported the same pattern among them: terror not of death, but of understanding. They had finally grasped what they had awakened. The Galactic Council reformed under pressure from dozens of species. Its first unanimous resolution was named after the fallen generals, a binding law outlawing political executions and false peace summits. It passed without a single dissenting vote. Human diplomats returned, quieter now, their presence heavier. Where once they had argued, they now simply stated outcomes. Negotiations shortened dramatically. The galaxy had learned to listen the first time in liberated systems. Murals appeared depicting 3 human figures standing against a star-filled void. Locals added their own symbols beside them, proof that the story no longer belonged only to Earth. Technologies shared during the war reshaped civilization. Faster drives, better shields, medical advances born from battlefield necessities spread across species lines. Humanity did not charge for them. The cost had already been paid. Still, Earth did not demilitarize. Fleets remained active, crews rotating. Through endless drills, readiness became cultural, almost ritualistic. Peace, humans believed, was something you guarded with teeth bared. Children on Earth learned the names Reyes, Sukhoi, and Volkov before they learned the names of continents. Not to glorify war, but to remember consequence. Teachers were careful with the lesson. Strength exists so that restraint is a choice, not a weakness. Decades later, explorers found the remnants of the imperial capital drifting cold and silent. No scavengers touched it. A quiet consensus had formed across the galaxy. Some graves were too large to plunder. A new generation of alien officers studied human warfare obsessively, trying to decode the pattern. They failed, because there was not only one constant rule. Humans respond in proportion not to threat, but to betrayal. When a minor power once considered provoking Earth to test its limits, their own advisors shut it down instantly. Don't bluff, they said. They remember. On the anniversary of the executions, Earth's fleets paused for 1 minute of total silence. No signals, no movement. Across the galaxy, traffic halted in unspoken respect. Humanity never built monuments to the war itself, only to the cause. 3 names, carved into stone, metal, and data cores. Unerasable, the galaxy stopped, asking whether humans were merciful. It learned a better question was whether mercy was deserved. Because when Earth had unleashed Merciless, all-out war, it had not done so to dominate the stars but to draw a line so clear, so absolute, that no civilization would ever dare cross. It again darts sand in the endless dark between worlds. That line still glows, an invisible boundary written in fire, memory, and the unbreakable promise that some actions echo forever. Years passed, and the galaxy settled into an uneasy stability shaped by human presence. Trade resumed along new routes guarded by neutral fleets, and border disputes were resolved quickly when a single human envoy arrived and quietly opened a data slate containing archived war footage. Words became unnecessary. Earth itself changed. The planet grew quieter, more focused. Celebrations were fewer, remembrance more deliberate. Veterans returned not as heroes demanding praise, but as custodians of a truth they hoped would never be tested again. A new generation of human officers rose through the ranks, trained by those who had fought in the Merciless war. They were taught compassion alongside lethality, ethics alongside strategy. "You must know how to end worlds," their instructors said, "so you never have to." Some alien cultures struggled to understand this contradiction. How could the species that shattered an empire also insist on restraint? Human philosophers answered simply, because power without restraint is just another empire waiting to be destroyed. At the edges of known space, remnants of imperial ideology festered in hidden enclaves. They whispered of revenge, of restoring glory. Human intelligence knew of them all. Earth chose patience, watching, waiting, allowing fear to do most of the work. When one enclave finally acted, launching a terror strike against a neutral colony, the response was immediate and surgical. No fleets, no declarations. A single human task unit erased the enclave's leadership in under an hour, leaving behind evidence, survivors, and silence. The message was clear: the war was over, but the promise was not. Across the galaxy, military doctrines evolved. Surprise attacks, decapitation strikes, and political executions vanished from strategic planning. Every simulation that included humans ended the same way, with catastrophic loss for the aggressor. Eventually, planners stopped running those scenarios. Human culture spread subtly. Music, literature, and philosophy flowed alongside trade goods. Alien audiences were drawn to human stories not of victory, but of sacrifice and restraint earned through suffering. The three generals became symbols far beyond Earth. On some worlds, their names were invoked in oaths of office. On others, their likenesses appeared in courtrooms as reminders of the cost of injustice. Earths never corrected the myths that grew around them. Legends, humans believed, served a purpose when facts alone were not enough. A century after the war, the Galactic Council marked the anniversary with a galaxy-wide transmission. It acknowledged its failure openly, naming the executions as the moment the old order died. The broadcast ended with a single human phrase translated into 1,000 languages: never again. Human fleets still patrolled, but more often now they escorted humanitarian convoys and exploratory missions. Where once they brought fear, they now brought reassurance, because everyone knew what followed if that reassurance was betrayed. Children, born long after the war, played among the stars without knowing imperial rule. They asked their elders why humans were treated with such careful respect. The answers were always the same: because they ended a darkness and chose not to replace it. In quiet moments, Earth's leaders sometimes wondered what might have happened if the three generals had lived. Would the galaxy have changed more gently? Perhaps, but history had chosen its path. The statues of Reyes, Okoye, and Volkov remained unchanged, weathered by time and solar winds. Fresh flowers still appeared at their bases, left by hands, both human and alien. Explorers eventually pushed beyond the old imperial borders into truly unknown space. There, among silent stars, they carried a cultural constant shared across species, a universal understanding of consequence. When first contact teams asked humanity what it wanted from the future, the answer surprised them. Not dominance, not tribute, not fear, boundaries. The humans said, clear ones. Because the galaxy had learned, at terrible cost, that when those boundaries were violated, when diplomacy was mocked with blood and trust answered with execution, Earth would respond without mercy, without hesitation, and without end. And so the stars remained bright, not because war had vanished, but because one species had proven it would burn everything down to ensure some lines were never crossed again. That was humanity's legacy, not the empire it destroyed, but the peace it enforced by remembering exactly why it had once unleashed merciless all-out war.